Well, thank you very much, Licha, for your kind introduction. It's a great pleasure to be back here in Taipei and listening to the wonderful presentations which have gone before me. I was reminded, I think it was about 30 years ago I came the first time to Taiwan, and it's been always a place that amazes me in terms of creativity. It's a bubbling place where things are happening, and that same is true also when it comes to this topic, where I must apologize. My presentation will be, compared to what you have already heard and seen, rather boring, because I just looked at the empowering of workforce. So I thought, it's a more traditional topic in terms of economics and looking at workforce and human resources. But what you have already, and I think it's probably kudos and congratulations to Director Huang, because also it reflects his choice in terms of who has been invited to speak, to have that very fascinating combination of, we call it cross-sector, where you have management, aesthetics, art come together for innovation, but also what we heard this morning, just also for social development, with a compassion that was very much impressive to me to hear of all what has been done here in Taiwan. We have that too back home in Europe, but it's more departmentalized. Here today it was very nicely mixed to have social enterprise, to have innovation, to have robotics, engineering, and in that sense, maybe you guys here in Taiwan are ahead of us. So I'd like to briefly talk about workforce development in Switzerland. And knowing that to my left sits Mr. Joost Fair, who I think I should sit down and invite you to come up here and be the speaker. So I'll be talking about Switzerland, and I look forward to your complimentary comments. So without much further ado, let me start. I will be briefly talking about innovation as a concept looking at a system, how we organize our society, university to produce or to, let's say, encourage innovativeness. And it's, from my point of view, it's less an issue about an individual being creative or not creative. Of course, that's important that the person has that creativity at hand, but it is the whole system which should be either encouraging, supporting innovativeness, so it becomes then also a lived reality when it comes to the industry and not just an abstract idea. I will also then talk about some of the policy and strategy that's in place in Switzerland, and at the end with a few points of reflections. So let's start with the beginning. I'd like to borrow from Steve Jobs, who, as you can see here, what's in red, he ends up with his statement. It's also, innovation is about people, the people you have, how you are led, and how much you get high quality people. So it's less a money issue. Of course, money is important. I think for all the companies as well as society, we have to have money to be able to finance universities or startup companies. But there's something about being invited to contribute to change, to innovativeness. And innovation, I would also agree with art. Innovation means change. Otherwise, it's not innovation. And how to have a new idea is one thing, and to turn that into reality means changing either the enterprise, the product, or society. And that is an art in itself, how to bring about lasting change. So it is more than just R&D. When we look at the sustainable manner to create change, It is a combination of data, software, patents, designs, and all of that, which engenders innovativeness. Sorry, that was too fast. Let me go backtrack. And I would like to highlight also at the bottom, if we talk about society, our economies, to bring about, at the final end, when we talk about outputs, we talk about also patents, new products. It is a public-private partnership, but at a larger scale than just to do a private-public partnership like a road construction. It is about society, government coming together to create the necessary ingredients to engender and to encourage innovativeness. If you look here at the different boxes, my talk is about emphasizing what is highlighted here in red. But in order to have an innovative society, all of these boxes, in a way, should be in place. Or let's say, at least they should be sufficiently functioning as such independently, but even more so together, have an integrated aspect that the whole thing, again, encourages and engenders innovativeness. Education has to fit, tertiary education should be in place. I will say much more about that because it's considered to be one of the reasons why Switzerland is successful when it comes to the economy. Same is true for Germany. And on the right side, when it comes to the output measures, then of course what went into the input should, in that sense, ideally then show up in terms of achievements, in terms of outputs. The so-called Global Innovation Index, which is a new publication from the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, based in Geneva. They have just presented it a month ago at the World Trade Organization. Switzerland is doing quite well. At the final end, the final score, we're #1. When it comes to input measures, we're below Singapore, Hong Kong. Hong Kong, where's Eric? Yeah, so see, we're below Hong Kong. And with Singapore, there's always this competitiveness between Switzerland and Singapore in terms of the World Economic Forum. Are we above them, below them? But here it's clear we're not as high up as we could be, but output measures, they're, according to the GII, we're doing very well. And overall, at the moment, we're up there. Now, let's look quickly at the economy, the Swiss economy. You see here the primary, tertiary, the different sectors. Agriculture, 3.8%, industry 22.8%, and it's basically the Swiss economy to a large extent is a service economy, 73.7%. Now, enterprises, that little red dot that you see up there, that's the large enterprises. So by number of enterprises, clearly the small and medium-sized enterprises are the great majority, but that's also true in most other economies. The SMEs are it, and here it's, on top of it, a lot of them are family-owned. I don't know the comparative figures for Hong Kong and for Taiwan, but probably it's very similar. So the large bulk of enterprises are small and medium-sized enterprises, but when it comes to the workforce, it's the large companies which are basically providing employment for 34% of the people working in enterprises. So in terms of weight, the small number of big companies, the Swiss 500, such as Nestle, are of course weighty, they're big. And if you just look at Nestle, I put it up there in total numbers, there are 281,000 worldwide. as well as others that are listed here that some you probably know, from Hoffmann La Roche to Novartis and the two big banks and Holcim. Of course, these were all once small and medium-sized enterprises. To come back to the one I've shown you before, Nestle, there was a certain gentleman called Mr. Nestle who came to Switzerland from Germany at the time when Germany was undergoing a lot of political turbulence. It was a failed revolution, and a lot of intellectuals and entrepreneurs left. And he came down to Switzerland, as well as many other Germans who then made it their new home. And it started as a small enterprise and became what it is today, a huge multinational company. Now, when we look at the value added, you see at the very bottom, almost it's invisible, the first primary sector, agriculture. The real contribution when it comes to value added is the service sector. And when we look at the World Economic Forum, we're quite high up. There was a little dent in 2007 with the financial crisis, but we're still very much high up there. And it's not just to show you these statistics to brag about Switzerland being high up. It's more to ponder the question, how come the Swiss are high up? Compared to Hong Kong, we have just only 700,000 more people than you have in Hong Kong. You mentioned 7 million, we're about 7.8 million. So comparatively speaking, we're kind of neighbors, right? However, as the saying goes, what we have in Switzerland are mountains, rain, quite often rain, and people. No gold, no silver, no access to the ocean like in Hong Kong. It's a landlocked country, which was at one time very poor, and the wealth today is it's made by hands and made by people, thinking people, who through innovation have created products and services which has helped Switzerland become as wealthy as it is, and to stay up on these different indexes. A lot of the innovation is in fact due to, here we have again the enterprises and more detailed statistics in terms of who employs people. As you can see here on this statistics, when it comes to the large enterprises, they do employ 32% of the workforce, but the small and micro enterprises employ 26% of the workforce, and the others are 21 and 19%. So a lot of people work in small enterprises, and it's not just that fact as such is not significant. What is more significant is it has been so far a good formula with the education that we have, and particularly the vocational education system, that this requirement, as it is circled at the top, to have employees with the right qualification. Qualification is another word of the right kind of educational background, to have the competence that are required to be in this fast-moving world of today. So the educational system that we have, to explain it here briefly, the significant part is the top. I don't know whether this shows a, can I point it, or the red one? Yeah. All right, thank you. So here, you know, kids go through school, primary school, and so on. And then up on the left is the track that could lead to university education. According to OECD statistics, Switzerland has the lowest percentage of school leavers that go to get academic university education. Where do they go? Well, many of them go through the other track over here. Vocational education, and vocational in English and in most other countries is a wrong translation. Vocational sounds like, you know, you do a little bit of, you're working, but it gives the impression it's a low-level type of job. When in fact, if you go and visit Switzerland, I would highly recommend that you come and look at what our apprentices do, and that's what they will do. They go first through 3 to 5 year apprenticeship learning, where they go to school for 2 days out of the week, and the 3 days they work in an enterprise. You should see the laboratory work they already do compared to many other countries where I would say what they do is already at the same level as a master's degree level of university education in other countries. So people go through vocational education, end up maybe with a higher vocational education as a University of Applied Science. And if they want to continue, we have a bridge where they can move over and get a PhD if they really want to be into much more higher education. So that formula of very excellent apprenticeship opportunities with excellent, also highly performing universities of applied science, which you could maybe call here a higher level of professional schools, allows the small and medium-sized enterprises to get the kind of highly qualified, very competent labor force, which allows Switzerland and most of its enterprises to be that high in regards to innovation and in terms of also competitiveness. They're skilled, motivated, start their own company because they have already experienced what the different industries are all about, and they're easier. It's easy for them to move into the market, into the economy, than had they done maybe. Had they done. Now did I shift it or something? Yeah, had they done maybe 7 to 8 years of university education and end up with maybe a degree, maybe sometimes not even a degree, and are not equipped to enter the labor market and spend years trying to figure out how to start a career, which is a wasted opportunity for the individual, the young individual who doesn't have yet skills that are making that person ready for the labor market, nor is it interesting for the companies, because the people sometimes going through a long academic education might just simply have to be broken in for 1 or 2 years at the cost of the company to have to train them how to work in the real labor market or in the company. And on top of it, parents, you should also hear what the parents say when they were interviewed, where would they like to send their kids. The majority said, here, we want them first to learn a job, a profession. And if they still want to go into higher education, they have the opportunity to go over and get academic education. But we don't want them to lose time, and at the end they don't have something concrete, so they will and then feel miserable about not being up at the higher level in terms of career opportunities. So what I'd like to say is Switzerland, the government, to some extent also offers help for the small and medium-sized enterprises. We have the Commission to encourage technology and innovation. Ministry of Economic Affairs offers research opportunities, so SMEs can conduct research that helps them stay abreast of developments. But the lower level second point is also true. There's no industrial policy. The Swiss government in that sense doesn't intervene in the economy with more either subsidies or more other forms of instruments to direct the developments of the economy. It provides very good education, opportunities, and also excellent universities who attract a lot of foreign students to an extent that, that's my last slide. I just wanted to say that when it comes to education, our higher educational institutions, the majority of our professors now are not Swiss. And the majority of our research assistants doing PhDs are not Swiss. They come from all over the world. And you know, imagine yourself Taipei. I don't know how many foreigners live in Taipei, but on the average in Switzerland we have 18% of the population are not Swiss. Geneva, where we are, it's 41% of the population that are not Swiss. It's a very much of an internationalization, and particularly when it comes to education, it's meant to be to attract high caliber young students and researchers to make sure that our universities are at the top level when it comes to innovativeness. A final picture here to say, when it comes to being entrepreneur, you know, you have the dark pyramid here is the average age of the population. Then you have the more reddish colored pyramid here, that's the working population. And at the bottom, I'm sorry, that was the age of the population. And here you got the entrepreneurs, and you see it extends to 82 or 92. So if you want to be an entrepreneur and go long into a long-lasting life, Switzerland could be the right place to be, and not to think of retirement at 60 or 65, but to be able to venture into a longer, extended life of being an entrepreneur. I'm coming to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.